So, Ginger,
Yeah?
you know how we wanted to start a podcast, but we were having trouble coming up with a topic?
Yeah?
Okay, so here's my pitch. The topic of the podcast is us trying to come up with the topic for the podcast.
What, like we pitch each other podcast ideas and that's the podcast?
Yeah, exactly. We could call it, What Should Our Podcast Be About?
Miles, that's really stupid. Let's do it.
What should this song be about? I'm trying to figure it out. What should this song be about? Could you perhaps help me out? I've had a moment of doubt. What should this song be about? Welcome to What Should Our Podcast Be About? The podcast where we try to figure out what this podcast that you're listening to right now should be about. I'm Miles Grover.
And I'm Ginger Barb.
And today, I want to start with some updates or corrections.
Updates and corrections? Like okay. I didn't know we did updates and corrections.
We don't, but now we do. Or we didn't.
All right.
One thing is...
This isn't going to be you correcting me, right? Because I hate that.
Not specifically.
Okay.
One update is Kronk's New Groove was not that good.
Yeah, I was really hoping it would be.
It was fine, but it wasn't particularly good. Big
Joel said it would be all right, and I feel like his review let me down.
Yeah. Maybe he was comparing it to worse stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it was fine.
It was fine. It could have been worse, certainly. It wasn't awful, it just wasn't particularly good.
I don't think I would watch it again.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't. And we watched Emperor's New Groove lots of times.
Lots.
So yeah, definitely
Lots of times. We should have just watched that again.
Yeah, we should have. Our time would have been better spent. Another thing is, this is a correction that does involve something you said, but also things I said. In our last episode, we were talking about the buddies going to the past and the rapper buddy inventing rap, and like we tried to think of who he would influence, like Marty McFly influenced Chuck Berry or whatever, right?
Right. Right.
And we said one thing we said was that Chuck D was in Run DMC, which is not the case. He was in Public Enemy.
Oh, okay. That one was you.
No, that was you, actually.
Was it me?
Okay. Pretty sure, yeah. But also, we talked about that song Rapper's Delight, which, is the hip to the hip of the hip.
Yeah, I remember song. We had a discussion.
The Sugar Hill Gang song.
Yeah.
And we were talking, because the time period was the 90s, and I knew that song was not from the 90s, but that song was actually from 1979.
No.
Yeah, it's basically the first recorded hip-hop song, and I just wanted to, I was listening back to it when I
had no idea that song was that old.
I know, right? When I was listening back to it, I was thinking about, like, obviously I know that rap wasn't invented in the 90s, when I said, like, the white rapper dog would invent rap, or whatever, but, listening back to it, it was kind of felt weird to say, like trying to give white people like the accomplishments of black people, which is actually what happens in Back to the Future, right?
Right, but it's a dog.
It is. I was just saying, my idea, I felt a little weird in retrospect about the way I said it.
Fair.
I do think the timing would actually work out pretty well, though, if the dog... If like Eminem's cousin called him, because Eminem's first album, or Slim Shady LP, I think was 1998 or 1997, and that was also 1986 or 1987. I forget which was Air Bud, the first one. So that would actually work out pretty well.
I guess golden retrievers are kind of the whitest dogs.
I guess
they're pretty white. I feel like in terms of dogs,
they are. That's true. Well, and it's a white rapper dog, a white rapper dog, and a white rapper kid.
Yeah.
So it's like calling him up, or maybe like Vanilla Ice or something, and being responsible for like the white rap genre would make more sense.
Okay, yeah.
And feel a little bit less weird, I guess.
Yeah.
It is kind of messed up, actually.
The Vanilla Ice just stole from Queen.
Yeah, true.
I mean, for his big hit.
Have you ever seen the interview where he defends that it's a different beat?
No.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. He's like
he goes ding 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 Ding, ding, ding. That's the way theirs goes. Ours goes ding, 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 ding. Ding, 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 ding. That little bitty change. It's not the same.
It's the same.
Yeah, it's obviously the same.
It's the same.
It's obviously the same. I know. It's ridiculous. But
I mean, like, it's fine. You sampled the song,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But, like, don't pretend
But
you didn't.
yeah.
By the way, apologies to the listeners for my voice this week.
Ginger's kind of sick.
I'm
this week.
sick. I traveled and I got sick on the airplane. I don't have COVID. Nothing contagious. Just a real bad cold.
Yes. And hopefully you will feel better soon. But we're going to be on vacation next week and won't have an episode probably. So we wanted to get one episode,
Yeah.
out for this week. Even though you're sick.
Yeah. So we'll be off next week. We'll be hanging out in Disney World. It should be fun. Hopefully I will be better by the time we make it to Disney World.
Another update, not really an update, but I went last week. I also mentioned the Onion article about archaeologists finding a whole race of spooky skeletons.
Oh, did you get that wrong?
No, not really, but I didn't get it exactly right, but I got it more or less right. But I went back and found the article, and it's so good that I just want to read a little bit of it.
Okay.
The headline is Archaeological Dig Uncovers Ancient Race of Skeleton People, which is pretty good. And a lot of times with Onion articles, like, the headline's all you really need, but this is really good.
That is a pretty good.
Right?
Does stand on its own.
Yeah. This whole thing is good, so you should read it. I put the link in last week's show notes. Maybe I'll put them in this as well. But this paragraph, so this is a few paragraphs in, says, standing at the excavation site, a 20 by 20 foot square pit along the Nile River, Hutchins noted key elements of the find. The skeletons lived in this mud brick structure, which, based on what we know of these people, was probably haunted, he said. Although we found crude cooking utensils in the area, as well as evidence of crafts like pottery and weaving, we are inclined to believe that the skeletons' chief activity was jumping out at nearby humans and scaring them. And though we know little of their language and means of communication, it is likely that they said boogity boogity a lot.
That's excellent.
Yeah. Like, that made me burst out laughing when I reread this stupid article. It's so stupid and great.
Yeah,
that's
great.
I just wanted to mention that. This is our mini skeleton enthusiast podcast, I guess.
Yeah. Podcast within a podcast.
Yes. And all that leads me to my first idea that I want to talk about.
Okay.
Which is a podcast that's all corrections of the previous podcast episode. Like, for example...
Okay.
These corrections that I said that Rapper's Delight was the first recorded hip hop song. That's not actually true. There was one like a month or two before that is recognized as the actual first one.
So would we record a podcast episode where we say a bunch of wrong things first, and then we would just do a following episode where we're doing all corrections?
I think it would be funnier actually if there was no first episode. And the first episode is us acting like we said some certain things wrong. We'd be like,
okay.
So last week we said this, but actually blah, blah, blah. We had to correct that. And then within that, there's mistakes.
Okay, so it would kind of be like a podcast where we're giving facts in the form of fake corrections?
Sort of. But we have to weave in wrong things into the facts that we're giving. Keeping the listener on their toes, I guess. If they miss an episode, they might not know. If they miss the next episode, they might not know what parts of the facts we gave were wrong.
It was just corrections on top of corrections. It sounds like it can get really confusing really fast. I feel like you'd have to take a lot of notes.
It might be confusing for us to try to make.
I think it'll be confusing for the listeners too.
Yeah. Well, it would just be like every week it's like, okay, and this, last week we talked about blah, but actually this thing was wrong, and let's expand on that. And then we talk about that for a while, and then some part of that is wrong. And then we use that as what we talk about the next week. Does that make sense?
All right. Well, so I guess, the internet does love correcting people, so that it could be a popular podcast. But I don't know if they like correcting people when they know they're saying things wrong.
Well, we wouldn't necessarily advertise that was what we were doing. I feel like, well, I guess maybe we would have to, but I feel like at least in the character of the podcast, we're not like, haha, what are the wrong things going to be this week? Right? It's more like we're just trying to catch up, but we never actually get to the episode because we're always just filling it with corrections from the previous episode.
So it's funny. I feel like it would get old pretty quickly.
Maybe.
I think that would be a funny like podcast to do for a couple weeks.
Yeah.
And then I think it would get annoying after that.
Yeah, I mean it's more of a joke than a real ongoing thing.
Yeah,
maybe, but I don't know.
It's a good joke.
It could
be like our April Fool's episode or something.
Yeah, well, I mean, it has to be more than one episode, I think, for the joke. But also, like the joke is a joke. I mean,
let's face it, our whole podcast is an April Fool's joke.
Yeah, kind of. Even though I kind of hate April Fool's jokes, but like it could actually be just kind of a fun framing device for talking about facts, right? Just an episode or a podcast you tune into to hear some random facts, and there's like a narrative to it, right? Where it's like you got this set of facts, but some parts were wrong, and that led you to a new set of facts, and some parts were wrong, and that led to a new set of facts, right? Like it's kind of like have you read If on a Winter's Night a Traveler by Italo Calvino? So if you haven't read that book, it starts, the first words are something like, you're reading the new book by Italo Calvino. And it's kind of a funny sort of meta thing. But anyway, you as the reader are reading and you realize that this is not the book you meant to buy. It's somebody else's book got printed in there by mistake. And you go back to the store and they give you a new copy, but then you get halfway into that and all the rest of the pages are not printed or something like that. And you just keep going back and like more stuff happens and you keep reading other books trying to get to the book that you actually wanted to buy.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's that as a podcast.
It's sort of that as a podcast, I guess. Yeah. I love that book. So
it's a good book.
I wasn't thinking of that at the time, but
yeah. No, it's a good book. Recommend. But I don't know if it would be a good podcast.
Do you want to know what I was thinking the name could be for the podcast?
Yes.
So you know the phrase "Who watches the Watchmen," which comes from Latin, "Quis custodiet Ipsos Custodios," who custodes is like sort of like custodian, like watchman, guardian, or whatever. I was thinking we could just call it like Ipsos Custodios, which is slightly wrong.
Okay.
And which means like the watchmen themselves is what that means in Latin, but it's slightly wrong. I thought that would be
kind of like what they do on Actually.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. It is kind of an Actually podcast.
Yeah.
As well.
A podcast to like make people mad because you're just constantly saying wrong things. Could be kind of funny.
Yeah, that's true. That could be a little bit of a different way to do it.
That could be kind of fun.
That would get a lot of, I find that you get way more engagement on social media and stuff if you just say a wrong thing or ask a dumb question than if you say funny or smart stuff.
Yeah, that's true. No, I'm saying the internet loves correcting work out pretty people. Well.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like say things just kind of slightly wrong about things that people take really seriously, like comics,
fandom stuff for sure would work. Yeah, well,
TV shows. Yeah. All right.
Yeah. Okay. So that's that idea and a half, I guess.
That could be kind of fun.
Do you have an idea?
I have an idea this week.
Okay.
Which is all I've been able to come up with in between all of my time sleeping and taking care of our son.
Yeah. Being sick.
Being sick, yeah. It's not left much time for me to be creative. But I was thinking we could do a podcast. I don't have a title for this one, but a podcast where we give home improvement tips, but we give bad home improvement tips.
Okay, so more trolling people on the internet.
More trolling people.
Okay, and that's also pretty actually kind of thing. Like people be like, do that thing.
I was thinking like people are like asking for tips and so it's like kind of an advice podcast, but bad home improvement suggestions.
So do you have like an example you're thinking of?
Like, how do I keep my fridge from smelling bad?
And would it be like advice that wouldn't work or advice that might work but is a bad thing to do? Like you could just fill it to the brim with mint leaves or something.
Yeah.
or I don't know.
Yeah. Spray it with Febreze every time it starts to smell bad.
Yeah. Okay.
Don't worry about cleaning it out. A lot of people will tell you that you need to like clean the Febreze, the spoiled food out of your fridge.
Oh, yeah.
but if you leave it in there long enough, eventually it'll stop smelling. So just Febreze it.
If you leave it in there long enough, that's probably
And
true.
Febreze is totally safe for food.
Right.
So
right. You might want to spray some pesticides in there just in case there's any bugs in there.
Yeah.
Don't take your food out before doing it, for sure.
Another thing you could do is like fill your ice cube trays with candle wax and freeze that.
Okay.
That'll keep your freezer smelling fresh, and it'll kind of waft up into the fridge because fridges draw cold air from the freezer. So
yeah. So it would make it smell like wax?
Or
you were thinking scented
candles.
I see.
Scented candles. Yeah. Just let your guests know, though, if you're having like a dinner party or something.
Yeah.
So they don't go for those ice cube trays.
Sure.
Because I don't think candles are probably safe to drink.
Probably not. I mean, if you really wanted to help the smell of your fridge, you could fill the trays with candle wax and also put wicks in there and light them and then close the freezer and just kind of let the candles go in the freezer.
Yeah, that's
but it's cold,
better.
so it won't burn anything down. Or
Yeah.
hurt anything.
Yeah.
So it should be fine.
It'll be fine. And it's totally fine to light candles in plastic ice cube trays as long as they're in the freezer.
Yeah, because it's cold.
Because it's cold.
And fire and ice are opposites, so
yeah, they cancel each other out.
Yeah, it cancels out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. That's very stupid. I don't
It's
totally,
stupid, but it could be fun, right?
It could. I don't totally get the podcast angle of it, of like, it seems very, very much like that also wouldn't last more than a couple weeks of doing that podcast.
No, home improvement like tips are endless.
No, I know, but like it would be pretty obvious that they were stupid and bad, and who would like that's the joke, right?
Right.
So I don't know.
I mean, don't people like listening to things that are stupid and bad? I mean, hopefully they do if they're listening to this podcast.
Our podcast does require that people like listening to things that are stupid and bad. So hopefully, but yeah. I don't know. I mean, we don't have all that many listeners at this point.
Right.
So
well, maybe we're not being stupid enough.
That's true. We could be giving worse advice, I guess.
Yeah, let us know if you would like us to be stupider.
Is our podcast stupid enough? Too stupid?
Or just the right amount of stupid?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have other ideas?
Yeah. Let's see. I have an idea called But Is It Art?
Okay.
And the podcast is we debate whether random things are art. Are corn dogs art? Are beanbags art? Beanbag chairs. Are dogs art? I don't know.
Okay. So let's pick one of those and give it a try.
Corn dogs. Are corn dogs art?
No, they're food.
They're food, but like, okay, so there's a few angles. I guess I'm debating, I'm taking the position yes, because you can't have a debate if we just agree.
Right.
So if I'm taking that position, there's a few angles, right? One is you could make a kind of goofy argument about like the origin of the word art, because art in some sense just means anything people make.
But the corn dogs could have been made by machines. They probably were.
Okay, so now we're in the AI, is AI art question.
Well, but like industrial, like food making machines are not AI.
No, I know, but I'm saying it's analogous.
Yeah.
But but is a print of a Warhol piece not art because it was printed by a machine?
Okay, well, it's a copy of art. Yeah, no, I mean
it's art by most definitions of what you would like.
Okay, but that's
wall,
not
right?
a corn dog.
Okay, but that does suggest that if the corn dogs being made by a machine doesn't necessarily make it not art.
Well, I was just refuting your art is made by something a person makes.
Sure. Well, but also not all corn dogs have to be art for some corn dogs to be art.
Okay, some corn dogs could be art, but I think there would have to be something that differentiates them from other corn dogs.
Well, not necessarily, because there's lots of landscape paintings that we would definitely call art that are pretty much, close to photorealistic, and, so they're not putting a lot of interpretation on it. And also, could be lots of different artists made this landscape, right?
Yeah, but I think
you would still call it art.
Yeah, but there's something unique in each one, right? Like it's somebody's perspective on a thing that, like, they're bringing their own perspective to. That's not the case with corn dogs that are mass manufactured.
But again,
also,
not,
I think
not all
like,
corn dogs are mass manufactured.
well, if you could call a corn dog art, then you could call anything art.
Not necessarily. I don't think you could call dogs art, for example. I said that as one of the options. I don't think dogs could be art. Dogs could have art attached to them or be part of art, but nobody's making a dog. Well, then again, we do breed dogs, so maybe dogs could be art. A sunset can't be art, maybe.
I don't want to do this podcast. It's already annoying me.
But it's supposed to be, and we could use like that alien smoking a cigarette or whatever, or something similar for the like cover.
Yeah.
But is it art?
Yeah. I mean, maybe somebody could make this podcast. I don't feel like I want to make this podcast.
I kind of find that pretty fun. Actually.
I hate debating. This reminded me that I hate debating. And I especially hate debating you because I never win.
Yeah, well, okay. I think, I guess part of what makes that a debatable topic is that the definition of art is pretty, nebulous or difficult to pin down.
You know why I hate debating?
Why?
Because you have to make stupid pedantic points to be good at it. And I don't like making stupid pedantic points, and I don't like trying to refute stupid pedantic points.
Yeah.
Because because it's always like, you're not wrong, but it's pissing me off. You know?
Yeah.
Like,
so you don't like philosophy in general?
I don't dislike philosophy. I just don't like when it's used in a pedantic way to prove a stupid point.
Well, I think I get what you're saying, because like I've often felt like sometimes when you get down to it, like, because when you get down to it in general with most things, like
what is anything,
right?
Yeah.
Like ultimately nothing is actually anything.
Yeah.
Sort of.
Yeah.
So everything's art, I guess.
Yeah, so it's kind of like I get really annoyed when I'm like, your point is stupid, but I don't know how to argue against it.
Right. Yeah, because a lot of times, like, intuitively it seems wrong, but, like, you can't see where the flaw in the logic is, actually, or whatever.
Yeah.
Which could be a problem with your intuition, or could be a problem with the argument.
I
right?
do
Could
think that my
way.
intuition is right, though, and corn dogs aren't art.
I don't know. I mean, obviously they're not art in the general sense when people say, I'm going to go buy some art. They don't mean corn.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Right.
If somebody was like, I'm going to go buy some art for our new apartment that we're sharing together, and they came back with a corn dog, you'd be like, be like, I've changed my mind. I don't want to live with you.
Yeah. And then they tack it up on the wall.
Yeah.
But I think there's an argument to be made for a lot of things. Like, actually, I just really intrigued myself by the idea that dogs could be art, because we have spent generations creating the dogs that exist, right?
Yeah.
Chihuahuas or I don't know, maybe Chihuahuas are not that.
I think Chihuahuas,
but definitely like bulldogs and stuff, where they can't even mate properly without their like legs falling off.
Or the like little tiny teacup dogs that like bump their head against the wall and have permanent brain injuries because they're just not meant to be that small.
Right. So they are a thing people created in a lot of cases for aesthetic reasons, especially like teacup dogs and stuff, right?
Yeah.
People took dog as a medium and made dog that we have now. So I think you could make a reasonable argument that it kind of is art.
So then is Frankenstein art?
Some dogs are art. Huh. Frankenstein could be art.
Yeah.
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 I think, to me, like the actual
questionable art.
Sure, certainly ethically dubious art. I think for me, the definition of like art really comes down to, was it intended to be art?
Yeah.
Right? Because you can pile up some rocks just because you
could nail a corn dog to the living room wall and be like, art.
Yeah. There was a guy that literally taped a banana to a wall in a museum or something, and that was art, right? And but on the other hand, if you were just like dicking around and accidentally taped a banana to a wall, it wouldn't be art, right?
Right.
Like, to me, the only thing that includes everything that's art and doesn't include anything that's not art is Did someone make it and intend it to be art when they made it?
Yeah, there's
And make,
there's a
and make is very broad in that situation. Nobody made a banana, right? But
there's a bit in Another Roadside Attraction by Tom Robbins about this that I really like, which is she's like made a bunch of art, and one of the patrons that sees it says, he's looking at a piece of her art on the wall, and he's like, well, I could have made this. And she just says, but you didn't.
yeah.
And I always really liked that. Like,
Right.
because I feel like that's, especially with modern art, a thing that people say a lot. Like, well, I
Yeah.
could have done that.
Right.
And it's like, well, but you didn't do it.
I mean, it kind of speaks to people. There's an intuition people have that art requires effort and skill.
Yeah.
And a lot of art does, but
Sometimes it's just a statement.
yeah, it doesn't have to.
Right.
Right. Which, like, a lot of things that take effort are definitely not art, right? Like, if you're constipated, taking a dump could be a lot of effort. It doesn't make it art. Right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's like another thing. It's like, that could be part of art, but it doesn't have to be, right?
Yeah. Moving is a lot of work, but it's not art.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Getting up in the morning and going to work is not art either.
Yeah.
So I mean, I feel like that has some legs to it. It's fun to talk about.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
I mean, you seem like you sort of hated it.
I
but
don't like debating it. I do like this discussion that we're having about art.
Yeah.
That I'm enjoying.
Okay, so maybe it's not a debate. Maybe it's just can either of us make an argument or make a discussion one way or the other about whether something could be art, right?
Right.
Because I do think you could make a reasonable argument that a lot of things that people definitely don't consider art typically are art. I was actually thinking about this the other day because I was playing a video game and I was thinking about, I think it was Roger Ebert, at one point said that like video games are not art, right?
No, I disagree with that.
Well, I mean, it's clearly not true in this day and age, right? But if you think about video games like Pong, right?
But someone still had to like come up with that idea and make it, right? Like,
yeah, for sure. And I'm not in any way just trying to disparage. Like, things aren't bad if they're not art necessarily,
right?
Either, right. But like, if you think about it, something like Pong. I'm just using Pong as an example because like the experience of Pong is not about aesthetics. It's not about a narrative. It's not about anything other than the gameplay. Right, it's about as bare of a gameplay game as you can get, right?
Yeah.
Where you just are trying to move the paddle so that it blocks the ball from getting out or whatever.
Right.
The ball, which is a 1 pixel square, right?
Right.
Like there's no art in another sense to it, right? There's no beauty to it, particularly like visually. There's
not like a corn dog, you're saying.
Yeah, okay, let's not get into that. Corn dogs do, I think, have an appealing aesthetic thing to them, but
does something have to be appealing to be art?
No, it doesn't. But my point with the video game thing is that I think you could argue that some kinds of video games aren't really art in the sense that people usually mean when they mean art, right? Because it's about a gameplay experience. Like Tetris, you could say, is kind of less art and more game experience, right? Various things where you're not focusing on anything else but the game you're trying to play, right?
I don't know. What about the music? The music that was created for Tetris.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm not saying Tetris. I don't want to say that Tetris, quote unquote, isn't art.
But we can agree that Roger Ebert is wrong.
He was
right?
he was definitely wrong. But I'm saying like if he's coming, because I mean he's dead. He's been dead for a while. He obviously said this a while ago. Right. So if he's coming at it from the point of view of games that are more purely gameplay and less other stuff. I mean, there's music in almost every game, but you could say the music is art, but not necessarily the game. Right. Anyway, Roger Ebert was wrong, but I think there's something to it on some level if you're talking about games of a certain type. Right. Like I have a game on my phone that is basically just a fidget spinner for my brain. It's not a fidget spinner, but like all it does, it's a game where you have blocks that have a number on them, and you hit them into another block with the same number, and that number doubles. And now you have to hit that block with the same number. right? So you have to double a bunch of blocks into each other, and they bounce around. It's like physics-based. Anyway, it's not important.
You're talking about Drop 7.
No, I'm not talking about Drop 7.
Oh, okay.
I'm talking about a different game that's even way more mindless than Drop 7, right? It's literally just a way to occupy my brain while I'm in a meeting or something, so I'll listen and not think about other stuff, right? So that game, I don't think anyone would argue is art, really, right? It's just a gameplay, a really basic gameplay experience, right? Now, obviously, there are assets in the game that you could argue are art. Like there's, little dialogue pop-ups with buttons on and stuff that people have designed and drawn and whatever. But the game itself, I think you could pretty reasonably say isn't really art. And I don't think that it was intended to be art, right? Meanwhile, playing Baldur's Gate 3, which I've been doing a lot of, there's tons of great voice acting, tons of great art went into creating all the characters. There's a big narrative and many different branching narratives that you can decide to take or not take. You can decide to be good or evil or somewhere in between. You can, lie your way out of situations, or you can persuade people, or you can murder people, right? Like there's a whole lot to it that I think is pretty obviously some form of art. The experience of it is an art, right? And there's also a gameplay aspect to it that maybe is not itself art, but the whole thing is clearly art of some kind. Anyway, my point is just that I was thinking about what makes something art, what makes something not art.
Yeah.
And then I thought about, because you have a sweater that has an alien smoking a cigarette and it says, "But is it art?" on it.
And it's the best.
It's very good. I don't know if it's from something or a reference to anything.
I as far as I know, it's just a meme that was put on a sweatshirt that Google advertised to me one day, and I was like, yes, I will buy this pink sweatshirt. Thank you.
And I also then later drew a picture of Vampire Cat from my comic on a sort of 90s pattern background, and he's smoking a cigarette and it says, "But is it art?"
One of the best birthday presents I've ever received.
And so it's a compelling idea.
Plug for Vampire Cat. If you haven't checked out the Vampire Cat comic, you should. Vampire-cat.com.
Vampire-cat.com is my comic. Anyway, so I guess that's that idea, is talking about, discussing, debating, whatever. Can we make some kind of convincing argument that any random thing is art? And sometimes I imagine we can't, right? Like I said, sunsets can't really be art, right? A picture of a sunset can be art, but a sunset is not a man-made thing. You can't put it on a wall, again, unless you take a picture or paint it or something, right?
Right.
So some things definitely, seem like they would be outside of art.
Right.
But most things that people make in some ways could be potentially argued
it's
as
interesting, art. If we observe it and do something with it, it could be art. But if it's just there, it's not art.
Right. All you need is a little bit of human interpretation to something to make it art, I guess.
Yeah.
But you at least need that, right?
All right. So do you have other ideas?
I have a few. One I was thinking of, I'm going to show you a picture and then we'll describe it. The podcast is called Bestiary Friends or Bestiary Friends. Bestiary, you know what Bestiary is? It's like a book of animals. Or like Pliny the Elder or somebody wrote about basilisks in ancient Greece or whatever, right? These are the animals that exist. Includes unicorns and basilisks and shit, right? Typically, you don't talk about a bestiary of real animals very much. But anyway, but beast is not spelled like the word beast, it's spelled like best.
Yeah.
So it's a best friends thing, right?
Yeah.
So the idea is going through the D&D monster manual and or other similar works and just talking about some of the weird, cool animals that are in them. And that might sound not that good, but let me show you this picture.
Okay. I'm looking at a picture of a ragdoll cat with Pegasus wings.
Yeah. This is a Tressum, I believe it's called.
Okay.
It's in the D&D monster manual. This is also Baldur's Gate inspired.
I mean, this just comes back to our should it exist podcast. And yes,
bit.
It definitely should.
Yeah.
It definitely should.
It's pretty good, right?
I'm sad it doesn't.
In Baldur's Gate, there's a wizard, and he's describing this, what sounds like a lover, or at least a very close friend that he hangs out with all the time, or he used to hang out with all the time, but now he doesn't get to anymore, and he's sad about it. And there's a dialogue line that I got to choose where I said, "Are you talking about your cat?"
All right.
And I thought that was just a joke, and he was like, "No, she's a tressum, actually. And if you knew anything about tressums, you wouldn't say that. And so I was like, okay, I assume that's like a nymph or some kind of lady or something. The way he talked about Tara, his friend, the tressum. And then I went and Googled, what's a tressum? No, it is a cat.
And this
it's a fucking cat with wings. It's a cat with big, cool wings. It's very cool looking.
What I really enjoy about this picture is that the cat kind of looks like independent from the wings. Like that, like it kind of seems surprised that it's flying.
Yeah, it kind of looks like someone took a picture of a cat, like someone it's a painting, but it kind of looks like someone took a picture of a cat they were holding and painted that and then put wings on it. And didn't
it seems very confused about the fact that it's flying.
Yeah, but it's great. There's another animal called a gramishka, I think.
Okay.
That is also...
Are you going to show me a picture of that one?
Yeah. They're kind of like, Lion Cat?
Yeah,
the cat
from Saga.
From Saga that says lying when people are lying.
Yeah,
they're kind of that.
It is Lion Cat, but scarier.
Scary hairless cat creature.
Yeah, he's got a bone in his mouth, and his whiskers look like they're made of bone too.
Yeah, I don't know if those are whiskers or supposed to be just the bone crunching, I think, maybe. But,
okay.
But either way, it's sort of a cat-like goblin, like a goblin-y cat.
Gramishka's a good name.
Gramishka's cool.
Kind of keep that one in mind for future cat names.
Also, I guess they explode if you use magic near them.
Okay.
So anyway, that's just a couple of random examples that I happened upon that made me think that could be pretty fun, like just going through and like talking about some of the weird, cool creatures that exist in this fiction or other fictions or whatever.
Yeah, that could be fun. I don't know like how many are interesting enough to talk about. I feel like that is something where we might run out of content eventually.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of things, and it's not just, we wouldn't just have to use, the Monster Manual or whatever. There's plenty of games that have their own similar things. There's obviously video games that have lots of weird creatures in them, all kinds of things we could potentially mine for content. We could also just talk about, historical made-up animals like, unicorns and griffins and phoenixes and whatever other stuff. I guess it's a little bit like this podcast that we keep hearing advertised that's like animals are better than people. You know what I'm talking about?
It sounds familiar, but I can't remember the name of it. But
I feel like it actually has the same name similar to Best Friends or something, but
yeah, it
could also be Bestiary Fiends maybe as well if we want to do that.
Yeah,
so like a double kind of pun thing. Anyway, if we were going to talk about it on this, we would have to probably go look up some more, or I guess we could look up those couple that I mentioned.
Yeah. So, okay, do we want to go through the ideas that we've talked about? And
we probably should. We are actually recording while Rory is sleeping this time.
We're on a limited schedule.
And so he could wake up at any moment.
He's already woken up once and we had to pause briefly. Yeah. So.
And he woke up like 5 times before that when we were trying to put him down. Anyway.
Yeah, it turns out going to the West Coast, which I did recently, Rory and I traveled to Seattle, and it has totally fucked his sleep schedule.
Yeah. Not too surprising.
Thinks we're still on the West Coast, so we're going through some adjustments.
Yeah. Anyway, okay, so the ideas we had so far, one was a podcast that's all corrections.
Mm-hmm.
One was
a bad home improvement
advice podcast. One was But Is It Art? And one was Bestiary Friends or Bestiary Friends.
All right. Is there one you're leaning towards?
I kind of want to talk more about whether random things are art.
Okay.
Our doors art. Maybe.
Okay.
But I don't know. The corrections one would be kind of hard to do, right? Because
I think it would be kind of hard to do now.
We could sort of talk about how it might go, but it would be so hard to do.
Yeah, we could do the art one.
Okay.
Let's do that. As long as I don't have to debate.
Yeah, we don't have to debate, right? I was never trying to like prove you were wrong or something. I was just like,
I'm right. Corn dogs aren't.
I think it's more fun to talk about. Could you make an argument that something's art, or can we find an argument for something being art? Right.
Right.
Like our door's art. Some doors kind of are, right?
Yeah. I mean, it depends on the door.
Some doors are beautifully created.
They're like those crazy
ornate
church doors from the 1600s.
Colorful, painted, or maybe they've got inlaid stained glass or all that kind of thing. So that seems pretty easy, but our doors other than that aren't. Like this door, I'm looking at the closet door in this room that we're in, and somebody designed these sort of inlaid rectangles, and they're very common in how doors are made now, but they probably at some point somebody had to innovate that at some point. Be like, wouldn't it be cool if we made some sort of pattern on here on this door rather than it just being a plank of wood or whatever?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily call that door art.
Wouldn't necessarily call it art. Yeah. I mean,
maybe a good
somebody wouldn't put it on a wall again.
Maybe a good litmus test for whether or not something is art is, would someone give me a weird look if I said this door is art?
I mean, I guess I think there's
because I feel like if somebody came into this room and was like, that door is so beautiful, I would be like, okay.
You must have seen a lot of doors.
Have you not seen a lot of doors?
But again, I don't think something being mass-produced or common necessarily makes it not art.
Yeah.
Again, it depends on the definition, right?
Yeah.
I don't think this door was probably created with the intention of being art. I think it was created with the intention of being functional with a little bit of decoration, right?
Yeah, and it doesn't particularly make me feel anything.
It's true. It doesn't seem to have a message or statement, really, or anything like that. But on the other hand, it does have some aesthetic qualities to it. It was crafted by someone at some point.
I mean, maybe.
Well,
it could have been mass-produced by a machine, too.
I mean, people are still using the machines. Somebody crafting it with a hammer and chisel is still using machines, too, right? Like, you can use machines to make art. So it doesn't necessarily preclude it from being art. Again, clearly it's not the common definition of, would I put this up on my wall as a piece to look at? But even doors that are very beautiful and artful, you wouldn't do that with either, right?
Right.
You wouldn't say, I'm going to get a piece of art and mean that door. Probably,
yeah.
Except in a very specific context.
Unless you wanted to, make your new roommate feel weird about you when you said I'm going to buy some art and you come back with a door and a corn dog.
Yeah. I mean, this could also just be like a way to rationalize doing whatever the fuck you want and then saying you were doing it for artistic reasons or something. I don't know.
Would that be chaotic good or chaotic neutral?
That seems pretty chaotic neutral.
Yeah.
At best, maybe, but chaotic artistic neutral? I don't know. Okay. What can you think of something weird, random thing to see if it's art?
Spoons.
Are spoons art? Some spoons are pretty artistic.
Yeah.
A lot of spoons are not.
Some spoons have really pretty handles.
Yeah.
Some people collect spoons.
That's true. Some people probably put spoons on walls.
Yeah.
As decoration.
Yeah. No, I think my grandma actually did have a case of spoons.
Yeah.
On her wall at one point.
How would we structure, if we were going to do this podcast,
like a velvet case.
Case with spoons. Yeah. I think I've seen that. Yeah. How would we structure this podcast if we were going to do it? Would we try to take a whole episode and really break down, is something art, some particular thing art, our dog's art or whatever?
Fun to take suggestions. I always think suggestions from people are fun.
Yeah.
Or they could be fun to take suggestions from people. Somebody could send in smoke detectors.
I wonder if smoke detector. Interesting. Okay. Smoke detectors are pretty good because they don't have because I say pretty good because I was just thinking maybe this podcast is more about trying to find things that you can't make a good argument for being art, but which are not obviously not art, at least man-made things, right?
Right.
Again, the ocean isn't art, right?
Right.
And that's easy enough. There's no real argument to make for that. Or is it's maybe this podcast is, can you find things that could be art that you can't actually make a good argument for? And are there things that you really wouldn't think are art, but you maybe could make an argument for? Like dogs, for example, right? Dogs are not really man-made, but they're kind of man-made.
Yeah.
Like we talked about before.
Yeah.
So I feel like this is trying to find the margins because spoons, doors, a lot of sort of things that are functional things in some cases are art. So a lot of answers will be yeah, sometimes, but not usually, right? Television. Oh, okay, that's interesting.
Because they can show you art.
They display art, but are they themselves art? And I don't think I've ever seen like a very fancy TV, like fancy like ornate TV. Or
I mean, back in the like 50s and 60s, they were like wooden, so maybe they could have been.
Yeah, the case, the sort of case for the TV might have had some decoration on it, but does that make the TV art? I don't know.
No.
I guess it's like saying is a canvas art, though, right? Like a TV is a medium for art.
Yeah, but it could be both.
Yeah.
It could be both.
Yeah, maybe.
Like, there've been some, like, I feel like aesthetically pleasing TVs, like, the kind of, like, bubbly looking ones.
I mean, people definitely design TVs to try to look sleek or thin or cool or whatever.
Right.
I mean, I feel like most TVs are pretty...
Well, now.
At least especially nowadays.
Now,
yeah. Mostly just a flat screen with a little bit of a bezel around it or whatever.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I don't know. I don't... Yeah. I feel like maybe I see more, like, computer monitors that are still might be flat screens, but that they try to make sleek or cool looking or whatever.
Yeah.
And those are basically just the same as TVs now, right?
Yeah.
But I still don't know if you would call it art.
Yeah.
I want to talk about smoke detectors for a second, because they are pretty bare bones functional, but like they probably don't have to be circles. They probably don't have to have the exact like lines that are on them, or
Is there a reason they're circles?
I don't know.
Maybe just because it's easier to like twist it off when the fucking batteries get annoying.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, yeah, it might be for functional reasons, but there could be. There's some amount of design and craft that went into making them look the way they look, right?
Right.
And probably, all the smoke detectors you've got in your house probably were like, injection molded at a factory or whatever, and then assembled in a factory or whatever. But somebody had to like make that mold, and that might have been an act of sculpture.
Right.
Right. Certainly you could make a sculpture out of or smoke detectors or whatever.
And then
that would be art.
Because you could say that about anything, really.
Pretty much
you could
anything.
Transform anything into art.
Right.
Like, I've nailed this corn dog to the wall, and now it is art.
Right. I taped this banana to the wall. I pissed in a jar and put a statue of Jesus in it, and here's my piece of art called Piss Christ. That's a real thing. If you didn't know about that.
I didn't know about that, but it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. Or was it Duchamp's thing that was just a urinal, basically?
Yeah.
Art and stuff. Obviously, a lot of people have already thought about and deconstructed kind of what it means for something to be art. So maybe we wouldn't be covering any new ground, really, but it still could be fun
to talk about.
Have some conversations. To me, the fun part is finding things that are right on the edge. Right? Like dogs. I really think it's interesting. Like, it's actually sparking in my brain a little bit, thinking that dogs could be art, right? Again, obviously you're not nailing a dog to the wall, hopefully, for art. Although people do nail animals to the wall, taxidermy. Is taxidermy art? It is,
Taxidermy's art, for sure.
Well, it is, but, I mean...
It is, especially those little dioramas where they put the animals in cute clothes and have them do people things.
That's definitely...
Which is my favorite.
That's definitely art. That is clearly art. But is stuffing an animal and doing nothing more to it than that?
Well,
like,
you don't know about
art?
Taxidermy then,
that's
if
true.
That's what you think happens. Because, like, you got to put in the glass eyes.
Yeah.
You got to do a lot of stuff.
But what you're doing is trying to reproduce what the animal looked like in life, basically.
Right. But, I mean, what are you doing when you paint a landscape?
Right. Or take a photo.
Yeah. Right.
I mean,
I would say taxidermy is art, for sure.
I would... My first inclination is that, yeah, it seems like it should be art. But I do wonder...
It definitely takes skill and talent.
It does. But lots of things that we wouldn't necessarily consider art, take skill and talent, right? I wouldn't consider, like, the code that I write art, but it takes skill and talent. Right?
I mean, I do think that it's art, especially, like, if you've seen bad taxidermy.
That's true. The fact that you can mess it up really bad...
Yeah.
Does sort of speak to it being art, but then again, you can mess up things that aren't art.
True, but
bad.
I mean, it's a sculpture in a way, right?
Yeah.
It's just
there's certainly
using different materials.
You can choose how you pose the animal, I guess, and things like that. I guess there's like a base often or whatever that it's either standing on or the head's on or whatever.
Yeah.
That is clearly some kind of basic kind of art, right?
Yeah.
I guess, but I don't know. Does a piece of taxidermy make you feel something specific? That's
joy.
That's intended.
Yes, joy
intended by the taxidermist.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. A lot of people feel creeped out.
I mean, I feel like it kind of depends on the taxidermy. Like when I see a hunter's trophy on the wall, it doesn't make me feel joy.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes they're funny or cool looking or whatever.
Yeah.
But a lot of times they're just kind of like, oh, okay.
Usually it's like anger. This person is a sport hunter.
You killed this animal. That's cool, I guess. Cool, good for you.
Not really, but
yeah. I was being sarcastic, but yeah, like
I'm not getting. I mean, there are forms of hunting that I think are legit.
Yeah.
And so I'm not getting down on like hunting in general. Like lots of people hunt and like use every part of the animal, and that's great.
Yeah.
But people that just kill animals so they can hang them on their walls, fuck those guys.
At best, it's pretty tacky, right? At best.
Yeah. Well, it's worse than tacky.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like
it's not just tacky.
Well, I feel
it's shitty.
If you kill a deer are a lot of times overpopulated, so it's kind of a good thing to do. And if you ate the rest of the deer or whatever, and then you nail its head
but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about people that hunt for quote unquote sport.
Right. I'm just saying, like, your best case scenario, if you see like a deer head on a wall, is it's kind of tacky.
Right.
Usually.
Right.
But anyway, does a taxidermist, is that what they're called?
Taxidermist, yeah.
Do they intend it to be art? Because that is one litmus, or like one way of thinking about what art is. Do they intend this to be an art piece, or do they more intend it to be something similar but different than an art piece?
Well, what would they intend it to be if they didn't intend it to be an art piece?
Well, I mean, to me, it seems like a deer head on a wall, right?
I think that's usually intended as a trophy.
It's a trophy, right? And a trophy kind of is art. Are trophies art?
But
right, somebody made trophies.
Okay, but let's.
But it's the
come
same,
back to trophies.
But it's just sort of the same argument, right? Like, is a trophy art? Is something you're displaying to inform people that you've accomplished something? I guess that's what trophies are, right?
Well, yeah, but it's somebody still had to like design the trophy, right?
Right. So, but I would sort of think that you could say that the original sculpture that the trophy is modeled on is art, but maybe the trophies that are created off that aren't necessarily art.
Yeah.
Or maybe they are. I don't know. That's a pretty good sort of gray area, I feel like. And taxidermy, in some cases at least, seems like it falls in that category too. Clearly the diorama things or like sort of artful, presentations of a dead animal via taxidermy.
Like I've been to like museums where they have like the animal and they have like a whole like, recreating of like their habitat and I would definitely call that art.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean I personally I don't think you're going to convince me that taxidermy is not art.
I'm not trying to convince you. I'm trying to have a discussion of could it fall into that sort of gray area where it maybe isn't exactly art?
No, I don't think so. Trophies maybe.
But some taxidermy is trophies.
Well, yeah.
Or a lot of things.
But like somebody hangs it on their wall for display, like because they consider it art, right? Like
interesting. It depends again, right? Like I think people often hang it to display thinking it's a trophy.
Right, but does the intent make it not art?
I think the intent, like I said before, of the creator clearly has a strong bearing on whether something's art. But what you bring up is, does the intent of the viewer make something art? This has probably all been discussed in the annals of philosophy of art or whatever. But I didn't take that class at college, so
yeah.
It's interesting to me to think about, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, I don't think that that's a good. I don't think because somebody could look at something and say that's not art. I could do that, and that doesn't make it not art.
I agree. I think that you can't necessarily demote something from art by not liking it or whatever. But I think maybe you can promote something to art by viewing it as art, right? Like imagine there's a piece of paper on the floor in your art studio and you're walking around with paint and you accidentally drop a bunch of splotches of paint on the piece of paper. You didn't intend it to be anything. You didn't even notice it. And it's just on the floor with a bunch of splotches. Somebody else comes by, picks it up and is like, this is a cool piece of art. I'm going to hang this on my wall. Is it now art?
I guess
Kind
so.
of?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I guess so.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Huh. Well,
So
do we want to discuss more art, or do you think we've come to a natural ending for this topic at the moment? I think we might be on limited time.
We're pretty close. Do we have any other good controversial things like corn dogs that are funny to talk about?
Are corn dogs controversial?
Whether they're art or not could
Is
be
it controversial?
somewhat controversial.
Is it controversial?
My take that they could be art is controversial on this podcast, it seems like.
I don't want to brag, but I'm kind of controversial.
How about beanbag chairs?
Yeah.
Are they art?
I guess maybe they could be.
Art chairs in general.
Yeah.
They certainly can be.
Yeah.
Like spoons or doors.
I mean, yeah, because you gotta, I mean, it's woodworking, right? Like,
Well, this little bench I'm on, this little chair thing I'm sitting on is for my...
someone still had to design it.
Yeah, but that does that make... Is all design art? Not necessarily? Maybe.
Maybe?
I don't know. It's a very functional... This chair I'm sitting on is a very functional, no frills kind of thing, mass-produced in a Chinese factory or whatever. Probably.
Yeah.
But, that may or may not exclude it from being art. Preclude it from being art.
Yeah.
Beanbag chairs, though, are there... I don't know. I don't know if there are any beanbag chairs that anyone would actually consider art, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't like them, so I'm inclined to say no, but I know that's not how it works.
Yeah. Well, can you even make them ornate or decorative or in any way?
Yeah, you could have like a cool artistic pattern on it.
I guess so. But does that make the pattern art or the beanbag? Does something become art just by having decorations on it? Not really, right? Is a mirror art because it has a pretty frame, or is the frame art? And is the frame even
if
art?
If you made a frame for a mirror, like to customize a mirror, would you consider that an art piece that you've created? I would.
Maybe. I mean, you definitely would have to have like artistic skills to do that, right? Of some kind. But on the other hand, you wouldn't hang up just the frame on the wall. If you went out and said, I'm going to get some art and came back with just a frame, your roommate would say, where's the art? You just got the frame.
And you'd be like,
right.
No, I'm going to put this corn dog in the middle of it.
Right. And this beanbag.
If you frame the corn dog, is it art?
That, I think, is unambiguously art, actually. Yeah, pretty much. Because you framed it. You made it art.
I framed it. It's art.
It is. It's the same way of taping a banana to the wall.
We figured out how to make anything art.
Well, yeah, it's like I said. All you need is a little bit of human intention for it to be art, and now it's art, right?
This dead mouse is art.
Yeah.
I put a frame around it.
I mean, you just said taxidermy is art.
Yeah, but this is just a dead mouse.
Okay.
Nailed it to the wall, put a frame around it.
That is art. That is art. Unfortunately, that is art.
Maybe that could be the name for the podcast. Unfortunately, that is art.
I'm pretty set on the but is it art.
No, but is it art is good.
Yeah.
All right. Should we tell people where to find all of our things?
No, this time it should be secret.
Oh. Okay.
No.
Good luck. Good luck. Yeah.
You'll have to decode the clues from all the previous episodes, which say it outright.
Let's just say it outright. So you can find all of our links to our socials on our website at coolpodcast.website. You can email us your suggestions at coolpodcast.website.
I wonder if that's confusing and I should just put like a more reasonable name at coolpodcast.website, like what should pod or at
questions or something.
Yeah. I just was like, it'd be funny just to be like, what?
Yeah.
Coolpodcast.website.
Well, maybe you should set up questions at coolpodcast.website as well.
Maybe.
We could do both.
We could.
I mean, we don't want to go back and re-edit all of our previous episodes.
Is an email address art?
In this case, maybe.
Maybe.
So yeah, we're on Facebook. You can also find us on Instagram, Threads, and Twitter at What Should Pod.
I still need to put our Threads link, I guess, maybe on our website.
Yeah, I just created the Threads, so we haven't actually threaded anything.
Is that?
I don't know. Posted. Yeah. I guess posted.
Are we doing Twitter at all anymore?
I do promote our episodes on Twitter. That's about all we're doing on Twitter at this point because, it's a hellscape there.
It's becoming more garbage every day.
Yeah.
Elon Musk is apparently getting rid of the block feature.
Oh, cool.
Which, as far as, to my knowledge, is actually required by like the Apple Store and the App Store and stuff. You have to be able to do that.
Why would you want to not be able to block?
He wants people to not be able to block him, I think, is what it is.
Ah, okay.
And maybe
everyone go to Twitter and block Elon Musk.
Yeah. It's so dumb. But anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, we could make a whole podcast about
is X art? No.
We could make a whole podcast about Twitter.
Yeah, let's not.
But let's not. And again, we will be off next week because we will be in Disney World celebrating my birthday and Svetlana's birthday.
Svetlana's birthday, yep. It's in between your two birthdays.
In between our two birthdays, we are going to have a mousy celebration. Anyway, we're pretty excited. We've never been to Disney World.
Never been there, so that'll be fun. Please send us your ideas. Please let us know if anyone uses any of our ideas to make their own podcast. That would be awesome. Please, if you listen on Spotify, please look at the dumb questions I sometimes post on there. For example, for the Soup versus Soup podcast episode that we talked about Soup versus Soup, I did put a poll on that was Soup and Soup as the two options. And I'm the only one that's voted so far. I voted for Soup, but maybe you would vote for Soup instead.
And then please do subscribe, like, share, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, and rate us on Spotify. That would really help.
I think this podcast is actually turning out kind of good. So, it'd be cool if more people listen to it.
Yeah, it would be cool if more people listen to us. So, tell your friends.
And they'll tell two friends. And they'll tell two friends. Hopefully.
Yeah, I went to visit my cousin in Seattle, and I asked her if she knew about or listened to our podcast, and she didn't know and hadn't listened to it.
Yeah, it's weird.
So I guess I gotta personally share the link with all of the people in my life.
Yeah, I don't, because we both posted on Facebook a few times, and some of our Facebook friends have obviously seen that, but I feel like it's just Facebook doesn't want to show it to people or something. Yeah. Or maybe people just don't look at Facebook that much, I guess. But
yeah,
I don't know. It seems like people would have heard of it in my life, but they haven't, or or whatever.
Yeah. I don't know. So please listen to our podcast.
Yes. You already did that, so thank you.
Yeah, if you've made it to this, thank you.
Unless you just fast forwarded to this point, in which case you're probably pretty confused. But thank you for doing that anyway.
Yeah, but you should go back and listen to the rest.
But listen to the rest.
Because we left a hidden message in there.
Yeah, and we also solved the question of what counts as art.
Yeah.
Definitively.
Definitively.
And by the time you get back to this part, it'll be too late. You'll have already listened to find out that we didn't actually.
Yeah.
Tune in next week where we will see if we've come up with an intro.
No, don't tune in next week.
Tune in 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks.
Tune in next time.
Next time.
To see if we've come up with an intro.
We have an intro. We don't have an outro. You meant outro.
Did I say intro?
You said intro.
Let's re-record that.
All right.
Tune in next week to see if we have an outro.
Yeah.
You will also find out if we have an intro. Spoiler.
We won't have an intro or an outro next week.
Again, the next episode. Tune in next time. Same bat channel, same bat station. No, that's the same thing. No, whatever.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye. What was that podcast about? I'm trying to figure it out. Didn't catch what that was about.